The werewolf, a creature that has terrified and fascinated for centuries. From its beginning in the Epic of Gilgamesh, the oldest known Western prose, to more modern interpretations, the werewolf is easily one of the most iconic monsters of history, whether the stories about them are fictional or historic. Every corner of the world have their own tales of werewolves. While the werewolf can't exactly be described as a cryptid, werewolf-like creatures certainly can. One such creature is allegedly found in the American Midwest, the Michigan Dogman. In 1987, a Traverse City radio station decided to play an April Fool's Day joke on their listeners. The idea was to slip in something different, strange, or interesting on the radio and see if anyone caught it. Though that particular year they didn't have many ideas and were scrambling to come up with something. Local radio DJ Steve Cook had always been a collector of folklore stories such as Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster, and with that in mind, he eventually came up with the idea of creating a creature unique to northern Michigan. This led to him writing a song that was given the name The Legend. This song was based on myths and legends from around North America with bits and pieces from various stories to create its own mythos. The song told the story of a half-man, half-dog creature that attacks every 10 years. Once he finished writing the song, he showed it to his coworkers. Even though they thought the song seemed more Halloweenish than an April Fool's Day joke, they still chose to play it. At first, there were no responses, but later that same day, calls started coming in. Some of the calls were from curious listeners who were simply wondering about this strange song. Other calls were from people recounting their own experiences with a creature similar to the one mentioned in the song. Despite having an interest in folklore, Cook did not believe in these creatures himself. So when the calls started coming in, he did not take them seriously. Instead, he found it kind of funny. And of course, it is difficult to say whether the listeners took the song seriously or if they were in on a joke, so to speak, and called to play their own prank on the radio station. Over the years, more and more people have shared their stories. The first reported sighting of the Dogman, the sighting that the song is mostly based on, happened in 1887 in Wexford County, Michigan. Two lumberjacks were working deep in Michigan's remote wilderness when they had an encounter with a large creature. When they returned home, they described this creature as a 7-foot-tall monster with a dog's head and the torso of a man. It had blue or amber eyes that glared at them from the cover of the wilderness, and they could hear its howl echo through the area, a howl that sounded eerily human. This encounter is what sparked the beginning of the Dogman legend, which, thanks in part to the song, has become a prominent part of Michigan folklore. This encounter in 1887 was only the beginning. Over the years, more and more people have shared stories about their encounters with the Dogman. There are countless stories from various witnesses. Here's a few of the more well-known ones. The first story takes us to Paris, Michigan. The year is 1937, and 17-year-old Robert Fortney was out fishing on the Muskegon River close to the town. It was a nice summer day, and Fortney was enjoying the calm offered by the warm weather and the steady stream of the river. But that calm would be interrupted when a pack of wild dogs suddenly rushed towards him. Fortney had brought his rifle with him, so when the dogs came rushing out towards him, he quickly grabbed the rifle, aimed it into the air, and fired off a warning shot. This was enough to cause the dogs to scatter, all except for one. One of the dogs remained. A creature with black fur that was standing at around 6 feet on its 2 hind legs, about a distance of 10 feet from where Fortney was. The dog was glaring at Fortney with piercing blue eyes and seemed as if it was grinning at him, as if it found him amusing in some way. Fortney then fired off one more warning shot into the air. This time it did cause the creature to run off, but instead of running away on all fours, Fortney watched as this creature turned and ran on 2 legs. Fortney told very few people of this encounter, and he would not come forward with this story until a song called The Legend was played on the radio. The next story takes us to Big Rapids, Michigan, and comes from an anonymous man who recounted his father's story of an encounter that he supposedly had in 1961. The story, which is arguably the most famous story of the Michigan Dogman, goes like this. His father had been working as a night watchman at a manufacturing plant located in a rural area somewhere between Big Rapids and Chippewa Lake, Michigan. Near the plant was a large wilderness area known as the Haymarsh State Game Area. The watchman had been provided housing right across the street from the plant, which he was grateful for, as he would often choose to conduct his guard duty from the comfort of his own porch. This was partly because he had a good view of the entire plant property, but also because he was slightly unsettled from hearing coyotes, bears, and other strange sounds out in the darkness while patrolling the plant's perimeter fence at night. So, on one such shift, the guardman was looking out over the plant from his porch when, at around 3 a.m., he suddenly heard rustling along the perimeter fence near the rear side of the plant. He figured someone was either messing around or trying to enter a restricted area. So he grabbed his gun and calmly looked at this area where he had heard the noise. After observing the fence for a few moments, he noticed a figure emerging from the darkness. He couldn't see the figure very clearly as the only lights around were the dim lights from the lampposts, but he could tell that this figure was big, really big, and it also seemed to alternate between being on all fours and walking on its hind legs as it made its way along the perimeter fence. Now, perplexed by what he was seeing, the watchman quickly put his gun away and ran inside to grab his camera. By the time he returned outside, the creature was prowling its way along the plant's driveway and further into the dark street. Now, getting a better look at this creature, he could see that it was canine in appearance and had dark fur. It was also really tall, probably close to 6 feet. He kept his eyes trained on this creature until it passed directly under a lamppost. Once it did, the watchman, using a long exposure method, quickly snapped a picture. The creature would remain under this lamppost for a few moments more before it quickly dropped back down on all fours, turned and retreated into the wilderness. The photograph supposedly taken by the night watchman makes this encounter one of the few where a photograph of this cryptid was captured. The next encounter supposedly takes place during the winter of 1993-1994. A 13-year-old girl named Courtney was sneaking cigarettes behind her parents' home near Todd Lake, northeast of Reed City. It was early evening. The sun was setting and the weather was clear. She was facing a large abandoned barn on the property next door. Suddenly, she would notice a glint of light coming through the planks of the barn. Courtney thought nothing of it. She figured that it was probably a piece of old machinery that caught the light of the sun as it was setting. The object remained still, so she didn't think that it was anything of interest. But then, another animal, possibly a deer, snapped a branch in the woods nearby. Turning her head to see if she could see what had caused the noise, Courtney noticed that the object in the barn also seemed to move. This caused her to turn back to the barn, and now, thanks to the setting sun causing a silhouette shape to take form, she got a better look at this object. It was a tall animal. Frozen on the spot, Courtney was now looking at this animal, standing on two legs, at least 6 feet tall, with dark-colored fur. And to her, it resembled a large dog with a pointy nose and really big, pointy ears. As if realizing that it was being watched, the creature would turn its head and look directly at her. Now snapping out of it, Courtney ran back inside. But in a decision fitting for a character in a horror movie, she grabbed a flashlight and went back outside. Shining the flashlight towards the barn door, she couldn't see the animal anymore, so in another horror movie-worthy decision, she decided to approach the barn to see if she could find any tracks in the snow, which she couldn't. There was nothing. Worried that the creature was still inside the barn, she made the smart decision in this case and ran back to the house. Immediately upon entering, she told her parents what she had seen. Thinking that a wolf was prowling the property, her father grabbed a shotgun and ran outside. But he didn't find anything either, and this would be the first and only time that Courtney saw this creature. But it wouldn't be the last she heard of this creature. A few days later, she was speaking with a friend who lived close by, who told her that she had also seen something that was the size of a buffalo but had the shape of a dog in that same barn only months earlier. The Dogmen have supposedly been seen in several locations throughout Michigan, and many of these sightings are very similar. In some encounters, the creature is seen coming out of the woods, and in others, it jumps in front of people's cars or even in front of them. The creature has also been known to leave scratches at people's houses or tents. While there have been plenty of stories about this creature, the Michigan Dogman itself remains elusive. Many of the reported sightings claim to go back a long way, which shouldn't be surprising as the legend of the werewolf dates back centuries. In fact, it's believed that the legend of the werewolf may have followed many settlers to the US, and those stories might then have mixed with stories from indigenous people about Native American werewolves, leaving us with the werewolf we know today. According to author Linda Godfrey, reports of upright canines didn't really start appearing until the 1930s. Godfrey wrote a book about a creature known as the Beast of Bray Road, and after writing about that creature, she, much like Steve Cook with the song, became a go-to person for anyone wanting to share their experiences. This of course led to both Godfrey and Cook looking into this creature more. There has also been a few theories trying to make sense of what people were seeing. The most interesting theory, in my opinion, about the Dogman allegedly comes from Steve Cook himself. Supposedly in the late 1980s, early 1990s, he would speak with an elder from the Ottawa Chippewa tribe who believed that the Dogmen that people were seeing were actually members of a tribe that had the ability to shapeshift, but that had somehow become stuck between their human and animal forms. Shapeshifting within Native American culture is incredibly diverse, with beliefs and traditions that varies between different tribes and nations. Some see it as a powerful tool for good. For instance, a shapeshifter might transform into a wolf, bear, or an eagle to help heal or protect their community. But others see shapeshifting as a source of danger. For instance, and probably most famously, the Navajo speak of a harmful witch that has the ability to turn into, possess, or disguise themselves as an animal. This creature is also linked with legends of werewolf. I even found it referred to as the Navajo werewolf when I was looking into it. So it's not surprising that this particular shapeshifter has come up in discussions about the Dogman. With stories like this, there are always those who believe and those who don't. And those who don't have dismissed it as nothing but a hoax, a story that people took and just ran with, or a case of mistaken identity, such as people were seeing a deceased creature like a wolf or a bear, which, seen in dim lighting late at night, might be mistaken for another creature entirely by a terrified onlooker. Linda Godfrey have stated that she believed that those who contacted her to tell their story were sincere, but she also points out that she has never seen one of these creatures herself or any convincing photographic proof of their existence. Steve Cook takes a similar stance. He still remains very skeptical, but he does believe that the people who think they saw something really did see something, but what that something was is very hard to say. While you might doubt the validity of the stories of a dogman lurking in the forests of Michigan, you have to agree that it's very fascinating that stories of human-canine hybrids have such a long history, which spreads across cultures and peoples all over the world. In the case of the Dogman, it may have started as a prank played on the radio, but it's pretty obvious that it has grown into a legend in its own right. A creature that has now woven its way into the culture of Michigan.